The Peter Schiff Show.
Joining the program now is Carly Fiorina. She's best known for being the CEO of Hewlett-Packard. She was there from 1999 through 2005, the tail end of the dot-com boom, but she caught the bust. And before that, she worked for 15 years with AT&T before running their spin-off, Lucent, and then she moved from Lucent to Hewlett-Packard. But after she left Hewlett-Packard, she did have a foray into politics. She was an advisor to John McCain in 2008, and then she ran herself unsuccessfully in 2010 for Senate in California, trying to unseat Barbara Boxer. She ran for Senate the same year that I unsuccessfully ran for Senate here in Connecticut, but she's still active in politics. She chairs the organization, actually, that sponsors CPAC, the Conservative Union Foundation. I've recently started going to CPAC myself. Last few years I've been there. And more recently, she has launched a PAC Political Action Committee, trying to combat the false narrative. We've been talking about false narratives all day of the supposed Republican war against women. Carly, welcome to the Peter Schiff Show.
It's great to be with you, Peter. Thank you so much for having me.
And thanks for coming on. And so you're a woman. I mean, do you feel as if the government is at war with you? And if not, why do you think so many women are falling for this idea that there's a war against women and it's the Republicans that are waging it?
Well, first, I do think that liberal policies are demonstrably very bad for women. So thanks to Obamacare, women don't have access to their doctors anymore. They don't have access to their hospitals. They're losing access to their health insurance. Under this administration, more women are living in poverty than ever before. More women have left the workforce than ever before. But, of course, you don't hear any of those facts from Democrats. What you hear instead is that Republicans are waging a war on women because we're trying to deny women access to birth control. It's utterly false. It's a lie. Unfortunately, it works. So there are too many women who actually believe that propaganda because they're not being engaged in meaningful conversations by other women they know to say, hey, look, this is wrong. And, of course, it's also insulting to women. We are 53% of voters. We're half the nation. Every issue is a woman's issue. We think about a lot more than birth control.
Yeah, I always thought it was very patronizing the way Democrats go after the female vote by basically saying you're just a bunch of helpless women and the government needs to protect you from everything because otherwise you can't succeed.
It's very patronizing. But again, unfortunately, it works if people don't know and they get scared to death. I mean, if you listen to how the Democrats lay out this propaganda, it's very scary. Do you remember when the Hobby Lobby case came down, which of course had nothing to do with access to birth control and it had everything to do with religious liberty? You had very prominent Democrats saying, oh, this is an example of the long arm of the Republican Party and business reaching into the bodies of women to deny them access to birth control. Wow. Does that sound scary? And so this project is all about engaging people at the grassroots level, because the other truth, Peter, is we get out-hustled on the ground by Democrats. And
and I've mentioned on my show, I can never remember in my life, and, when I was in my 20s and dating, and, none of the women that I dated really had much money. I mean, we were students. I mean, you were just, but nobody ever had a problem with access to birth control. I mean, no one even thought about birth control being too expensive to buy. It was so inexpensive. Everybody had access to it. And to say that without government, people won't have access to something so affordable as birth control? Why am I having a problem hearing? I don't know if Carly can hang up and call us back. I'm not hearing anything. Yeah, maybe we can have her. She can try to reconnect on another line. I thought it was interesting too when I asked Carly about the war on women. Carly, you there?
I am back. Sorry, I don't know. I could hear you perfectly.
Yeah, but I just said, to me, birth control was always very accessible. Women didn't have a problem with it, and if they couldn't afford it, hey, I'm sure I would have sprung for it myself. In fact, just about every young man will help out his, gal with birth control if it becomes a financial problem.
Well, what's crazy about this is now women have access to free birth control. But what's interesting about that is it wasn't even part of the Obamacare legislation. This was a bunch of nameless, faceless bureaucrats, accountable to no one, elected by no one, who, after Obamacare was passed, wrote thousands of pages of regulation. And one of those regulations says, okay, you got to give women access to free birth control. Okay, there it is. The point is, whether we agree with it or not, and I certainly don't, why not blood pressure medicine for free? Why not diabetes medicine for free? Whether we agree with it or not, to say that Republicans are trying to deny women access to birth control is a lie. But meanwhile, if we don't combat that, then we don't have the opportunity to talk to women about all the other issues they care about: education, the economy, job creation, foreign policy. As a woman, I know that every issue is a woman's issue. We're half the nation. But I also know unless we deal with this on the ground, we are going to keep losing.
Yeah, the reason, though, Carly, that they want to give out free birth control as opposed to something like free blood pressure that, men and women would get is they want to bifurcate the country. They want to make it a sex issue to say, hey, we're in favor of women and the the Republicans are not. And they're just trying to buy the votes of women with free birth control. So instead of having to pay for it, it's, hey, you get it for free. But they're trying to draw this racial divide and get women to vote Democrats by making it appear as if Republicans are anti-women.
Well, I think that's exactly right. And it's part of the overall strategy of the Democratic Party and the liberals, which is identity politics and lowered expectations. So let's lower everyone's expectations about what's possible in this country. Let's play identity politics. The reality is that every wound in this nation is self-inflicted. We have all the potential we need, but it is being crushed by liberal policies. The truth is, it is liberals who are prepared to sacrifice other people's lives, other people's livelihoods at the altar of their ideology. However, we cannot win against this unless we get organized on the ground, we get out-hustled on the ground in election after election, and unless we face the fact that we have to start winning with women. And so that's what this project is really all about.
Yeah, and we talk about this war on women, and in fact, there may in fact be a war on women, but it's not the Republicans, but the Democrats that are waging that war, and they're doing it for a reason. They're really doing it because the more they can, make women feel helpless and feel like they're victims, the easier it is to get their vote because now they can hold government up as the answer to their problems, and so you create this. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was to make your point, which is exactly right. Do you remember in the 2012 election, an election in which we got out-hustled on the ground big time? If you look at the number of field offices Obama had versus the number of field offices that Romney had. Do you remember the famous video, The Life of Julia? Wow, yes. What a depressing vision of a woman's life that was. Here's this woman, Julia, and every major event in her life revolves around government. It's such a depressing picture.
And that's what they want you to think. They want you to believe that prosperity comes from government. Without government, we're all broke. But you are a classic example of a woman who succeeded, as far as if your definition of success is climbing the corporate ladder, becoming the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Did you experience, the narrative is, everybody is exploiting the women, that they're getting paid, 67 cents on the dollar. On your climb to the top of, first at AT&T and then Hewlett Packard. Did you experience that? Were you just getting paid substantially less than your male counterparts simply because you were a woman?
No. And, of course, I started as a secretary. My life is the American story. It's only in this country that a young woman can start as a secretary in a 9-person real estate firm and go on to become the chief executive of the largest technology company in the world. Women should get to choose their life and use their potential in the way that they feel is most appropriate. So whether it's being a stay-at-home mom or homeschooling your kids or being a CEO, women have enormous potential to live meaningful lives. Everyone in this country should have the opportunity to fulfill their potential. And that is why I have gotten politically active in the last several years, because liberal policies are crushing the potential of this nation, of individuals, of whole industries like energy. Bureaucracies crush potential. But ours was intended to be a citizen government. And if citizens won't stay engaged, get engaged and stay engaged to turn our country in the right direction, then we're going to keep losing important elections.
Yeah, and
and of course, we have a hugely important election coming up in November. We need to take the Senate back. We cannot leave Harry Reid in that job.
Yeah, and obviously, if you can rise from secretary to CEO, there was nothing. Your sex did not interfere with that progress, and it's not like, look, not everybody can make that rise, but whether you're a man or a woman, you still can do it. It's just obviously not everybody has the ambition or the talent or the drive or the intelligence to make that journey. Not most people that probably start out secretaries, maybe they stay secretaries, or maybe they become the head secretary, or maybe they make it up. But but the bottom line is that upward mobility is there. And there is nothing that stands in your way. But when the government comes in, and we can talk about this after the break, as I've alleged this and talked about this, and maybe you've experienced it, I think that to the extent that women do have a harder time succeeding, it's because of the government. It's because of all of the special privileges that they supposedly confer onto women that makes women less desirable as employees, that women and men might be less likely to want to hire or promote women because of the added baggage that they come with thanks to government. Because government makes it so easy for women to sue their employers for all sorts of things, employers might be more reluctant to hire them for fear of ending up on the wrong end of a lawsuit. All of the laws that Congress passes to protect women in the workplace, whether it's from gender-based discrimination or sexual harassment, that all of this stuff artificially increases the cost of hiring women, and therefore some employers are reluctant to hire them because they don't want to pay the additional cost.
Well, look, we need to be honest and say that women sometimes face obstacles in the workforce. They do. On the other hand, you mentioned equal pay for equal work as one of those pieces of legislation that now the Democrats are trying to pass. Equal pay for equal work legislation was passed in 1963. Okay? If a woman is truly being discriminated against, she has legal recourse and she should use that. On the other hand, what is the greatest impediment, to make your point exactly? What's the greatest impediment to equal pay for equal work? It's called the seniority system. The seniority system pays for time in grade, not for performance, not for merit, but time in grade. And so if you're a woman, women are frequently last hired and first fired. That's just the data. What happens? You don't ever make time in grade. And guess who supports seniority systems? Unions, government bureaucracies, and Democrats support both of those.
Yeah, I want to ask you, though, you as a CEO, all right, and you're a woman, I guess women can discriminate against women just as, I guess, the same as men can to the extent they could do that. But let's say there was a woman who worked for you, and you wanted to discriminate against her. How would you do that? I mean, how do you discriminate against a woman? Yeah.
Look, the most important thing that anyone can do in any setting, and government never does it, is to give people, men and women, the opportunity to fulfill their potential. And when people use all of their gifts to reward them for their performance, to reward them for their merit, this country was based on the proposition that everybody has potential, that everybody should have the opportunity to fulfill their potential, and that we should be a meritocracy. So anyone who's smart knows if you want to get great work done, you give people an opportunity to use every one of their gifts. The problem is that government doesn't do that. Bureaucracies don't do that. And so you see now in this country today, more women living in poverty, more women dropping out of the workforce. We have all this regulation and taxation that prevents men and women from successfully starting their own business and creating a better life for themselves.
But you put your where you put your finger on it, though, is in a for-profit enterprise like Hewlett Packard or anybody else. You are going to hire people and promote people based on merit, because if you're running a company and there is a talented woman and you don't promote her or don't hire her and you settle for a less talented man because you're a sexist, that's going to cost you money. That decision is going to undermine your company because your competitor, who isn't a sexist, is going to hire that talented woman, and now you're going to be competing with her and you're going to lose. The only place that you can discriminate is when you're in government, because government is not accountable. There is no bottom line. So if you're a sexist and you're in government, you can discriminate against women all you want. That's where you have to worry about discrimination in government. You don't have to worry about it in the free market. And the problem is what happens, Carly, is so many women, if they don't get promoted or don't get hired, now they just allege, well, it's discrimination. And now the employer is forced to prove that they didn't discriminate. And now they're wasting resources that they could better use investing in growing their business to defend some swift, frivolous lawsuit. And they may even lose it.
You know, of course, government, to your point, government, because it is unaccountable, because there is no transparency, because you are promoted in government not based on performance, based on seniority. In that kind of setting, no transparency, no accountability, everything's based on time and grade. That's where you're going to have a problem. That's where merit doesn't count. But here's the thing. You and I can sit and talk about this and agree with each other as we are. The problem is we know this supposed war on women that Republicans are waging, that propaganda is working. And so we have to combat it. And that's why I started this effort. It's called the Unlocking Potential Project, up-project.org. It's really a grassroots effort to have women and men talk to others in their communities, in their places of work and worship, to say, you know what? Here are the facts. Republicans aren't waging a war on women. It is conservative policies that unlock the potential of both men and women, but it is liberals and liberal policies and politicians like Harry Reid who are crushing potential, both of individuals and of entire industries. And we can't
more
continue
likely,
to get
Carly,
out-hustled on the ground.
The potential is already there. It's not that conservative policies unlock it. It's that liberal policies have locked it up. All conservatives want to do is remove the artificial barriers that the liberals have put in the way of women. Because it's not that government empowers people. People are empowered by themselves, by their own initiative, by their own brains and hard work and ingenuity. The problem is government bottles it all up. Government ties people up in red tape and prevents them from achieving their full potential. All you want to do is get government out of the way so that women can achieve their natural potential. Nothing that's going to be given to them by conservatives, but these are things that are being taken from them by liberals.
Exactly. Exactly right. And the other thing, you're exactly right. The other thing that I would say is, here's the other truth about big government. Big government enables crony capitalism because, and I used to run a big business, but only big business can deal with big government because only big business has the resources to hire the accountants, the lawyers, the lobbyists. If you're a small business, which is what makes this economy go, small business is the engine of the American economy, and we now have more small businesses failing and fewer starting than at any time in 40 years. Small businesses.
Yeah. Carly, I really appreciate you coming on the show. We out of time. Hey, great luck. Again, the new PAC is the Unlocking Potential Project. I wish you all the best, and maybe you'll run for office again because we can certainly use you in Washington.